Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram. Jai Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada. Prabhupada, Harinam Sankirtan ki jai, Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Om Jnana-timirandasya Jnananjana-shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavansya Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamsya Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Nitinamine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashyatya Deshatarine Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namine Gauratvashe Namaha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shrivasadi Gaur Bhakta Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So welcome everyone to our continuation of Unit 2 of the Bhakti Vaibhav course. Before we proceed, can someone revise a few points from last time's discussions?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
You explained nicely about this, the development of Vaishnava qualities in the devotee, whether it is automatic or some endeavor has to be there on the part of the devotee. And the conclusion was that it is both, because development of the Vaishnava qualities is also part of the devotional service, and it is anukulyena anukul, so there is part of the surrender also. So one has to develop both and also endeavor to maintain them and do on his part also. So it is not that our devotional service is so high that it will come automatically. So
Right.
both go hand in hand.
Okay, good. Thank you. Somebody else? Yes, anybody would like to share a few points from last time?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, you just explained that in difficult situations, how we can intensify our devotional service, and an intelligent devotee understands that every moment is a crisis situation and does not wait for the crisis situation every moment. He, does intensify his devotional service, and the example was given of a wide, a cobra with a wide mouth open, sitting behind a skull serper, like while we were watching movie or we are doing something nonsensical thing, and we don't take devotional service very seriously. So we can intensify, like when the
Okay,
devotees are put.
this we discussed in connection to which part of
Text
the Bible?
11. Text 11.
Okay, 11. Okay, this is.
Where actually you were explaining when devotees are put into difficulty, they have an opportunity to recollect the Lord with rapt
Yes,
attention.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. Okay, good. Thank you. Somebody else?
Focus.
Anybody else would like to share some points?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Power is coming from Lord and should be used for the service to Lord.
Yes. Okay, yes. So that's the a prominent theme of the last time's discussion, where Arjuna is remembering all the events of empowerment that he got from the Lord and how he was able to perform so many activities which would have otherwise been very difficult for him. But he was able to perform all those activities only because of the empowerment which he received from the Lord, and now the Lord has disappeared, and so he lost all those powers. And so that was the main theme of last time's discussion. And so I think so we will go ahead now. So we are on text 22-23. Yes. Okay, fine. So this was what we saw last time. Okay, so now we go to text 22-23. Now Arjuna is recollecting about the disappearance of the Yadu dynasty. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Narayanam Namaskritya.
Narayana Namaskritya.
Naram Chaiva Narottamam.
Ram Chaiva Narottamam.
Devim Saraswatim Vyasam.
Devim Saraswatim Vyasam.
Tato Jayamudiraye.
To Jayo Nudiraye.
Okay, text 22-23 of chapter 15. Pandavas retire timely. Okay, let's recite these two verses. Rajam stvayanu prishtanam suradam na surutpure Viprashapa vimudhanam nignatam muštibirmitah Varunim madiram pitva madonmathita chetasam ajanatam ibanyonyam chatu pancha vasheshitaha. O king, since you have asked me about our friends and relatives in the city of Dwarka, I will inform you that all of them were cursed by the Brahmanas, and as a result, they all became intoxicated with wine made of putrefied rice and fought among themselves with sticks, not even recognizing one another. Now all but 4 or 5 of them are dead and gone. Okay, so this is Arjuna is speaking about the Yadavas, the Yadu dynasty, and how they killed each other. So we know the pastime of how they had been cursed by the Brahmanas because they tried to play some joke with them, with Samba acting as a pregnant woman, whether the child is going to be a boy or a girl. And then they cursed them that what's going to be born is an iron lump, which will be the cause of the destruction of the entire dynasty. And that's what happened. So Prabhupada is speaking on these verses and he's commenting on this Vipra Shapa Vimudhana. Okay, somebody can read this from the screen. Is the screen visible to everyone? Balbhadra Kripa Prabhu, is the screen visible to everyone?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay, fine. Is everyone able to hear clearly?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay, so all the brahmacharis are present?
Some are on the way, Prabhuji.
Okay, it's always the same case, on the way.
More than 80% devotees are present, Prabhuji, here.
Good, very nice. Okay, fine. So somebody can read from the screen.
Hare Krishna.
Hare.
So, Viprashapa Vimudanam Nignatam Mustibhir Mitaha. Being intoxicated, another point is intoxication. We are already intoxicated, being under the influence of Maya, the material energy. We are already forgotten of ourselves. Nobody knows that he is not this body. This is another intoxication. He is not this body. This is a fact. But go to the outside of the temple, ask anybody what you are. Yes, I am this body. They are already intoxicated. So again, if you drink, then how much intoxicated you become? Just try to understand. Varunim madiram pitva madonmathita chetasam. Everyone who is in this material world, forgotten God or Krishna, he is already intoxicated. Just like intoxicated man, he cannot recognize even his father, mother, or even his sister or mother.
Continue, please.
It has been practical. One father intoxicated. There are so many instances. Rape the daughter. Daughter is crying, my dear father, I am. Who cares for that? Intoxicated. This is going on. So intoxication is so sinful. Intoxication is so sinful that just like the hog is intoxicated by this material world, eating stool. Is stool a food? But he is tasting very nice and he is deriving benefit. Sexually very strong. Never cares whether mother, sister or daughter. Every example is there in front of.
Yes, so here Prabhupada is explaining that how in this material world, everyone is already intoxicated by the bodily concept of life. So the bodily concept of life is explained as an intoxication an intoxicated state. The other example, which is also given by the acharyas, is like a person haunted by a ghost. In the Nectar of Devotion also, Srila Prabhupada explains that in this material world, those who are in the bodily concept of life, they are like psychiatric patients. So all these examples indicate that in the material bodily concept of life, one is actually not in a proper mental frame of mind, and he doesn't know what he's thinking, he doesn't know what he's doing, he doesn't know what he's talking. So just like an intoxicated person or a mentally deranged person. And so we find that the reason why these examples are given is because in all these states, whether intoxicated or mentally deranged state, the person, he misidentifies with himself. He doesn't know who he is and he doesn't know what he's doing. And so just like go to a mental asylum and you ask a person, who are you? The person, he talks so many imaginary things. He may say, I'm prime minister or president or so many things, which he is not. So that's what happens in a mentally deranged state. And so therefore, he thinks himself something which he is not. And that's the same situation in the bodily conception of life. That is, one thinks something which he is not. So one is not this body, but he's thinking he is this body. And we find that this bodily misconception is so deep-rooted, the bodily misidentification, that we find that practically everyone is affected by that. And it becomes so difficult to come out of that bodily misconception. And so even as devotees, after taking the devotional service also, that bodily misconception continues, and so it's a sort of intoxication, and then we become affected by that bodily misconception and leads to so many material consequences. And so even though we hear the basic fundamental philosophy of the Bhagavad Gita, which Krishna speaks of right in the 2nd chapter, you're not the body, you're the spirit soul. But even though it is such a fundamental philosophy, but we find that realization of this fundamental philosophy takes quite a long time to actually assimilate and realize. So can somebody tell a few ways by which one can come out of this bodily misconception, which is so very deep-rooted? Of course, one could say in general devotional service, that's a solution, which is right, but something more specific? Yes, any suggestions?
Hearing from the spiritual master regularly.
Okay, hearing from spiritual master regularly, good. What else?
When baat karte?
Yes.
Reading Prabhupada books regularly.
Okay, reading Prabhupada books regularly, correct. Something more?
Serving those pure devotees who are not on the bodily conception of life.
Okay, good. So association, serving, yes, that's correct.
When we make sacrifices on the order of Guru, that helps us to raise beyond bodily conception.
Okay, very good point. Yes, sacrifices on the order of Guru, yes. Okay, so there is, at the end of this whole discussion in the Bhagavad Gita about the spirit soul, this is the section of the 2nd chapter of the Gita from verses 11 to 30. That entire section, Krishna is speaking about the soul. Now, the 29th verse which is the famous Ashcharya verse. Krishna is speaking of how some look on the soul as amazing, some describe him as amazing, some hear of him as amazing, while others, even after hearing about him, cannot understand him at all. So the soul is so amazing that we keep on hearing about it. Frankly, from the very beginning of our devotional lives, we keep on hearing about it, but still the understanding of that remains quite evasive for a very long time. So towards the end of that purport, Srila Prabhupada is giving very specific solutions or guidelines to come out of this bodily misconception. The last paragraph of the purport there, Prabhupada writes, the easiest process for understanding the subject matter of self, however, is to accept the statements of Bhagavad Gita spoken by the greatest authority, Lord Krishna, without being deviated by other theories. Actually, Prabhupada speaks 3 points here. How to come out of the bodily misconception and understand the presence of the spirit soul. The first thing is this. The first point is accept the statements of Bhagavad Gita as it is spoken by the greatest Lord Krishna without being deviated by other theories. So accepting the Bhagavad Gita, the philosophy of Bhagavad Gita as it is, and of course acceptance of the philosophy obviously means following it also. The second point he says is, but it also requires a great deal of penance and sacrifice, either in this life or in the previous ones, before one is able to accept Krishna's Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that's the second point he says, and that is a great deal of sacrifice and penances. Of course, as Lord Rishabdev says, Tapo Divyam Putrakayena Sattvam Shuddhiyate Yasmat. So this is divine tapasya, which is following the various principles of devotional service. And the third point, which Prabhupada is stressing on, is Krishna can, however, be known as such by the causeless mercy of the pure devotee and by no other way. Okay, so the most important, or ultimately what all our devotional activities has to attract, is the causeless mercy of the pure devotee. And that, of course, will attract Krishna's mercy, and then Krishna will reveal that knowledge. We were talking about realization the last time also. So ultimately, it is the mercy of the pure devotee which is going to help us realize these spiritual truths. Otherwise, even after hearing so much, even after reading so much, still the spiritual truths will remain unknown in the true sense. Okay, so that's what Prabhupada is saying over here. That's the intoxication. Then, of course, then if one takes intoxicants on top of that, so already intoxicated, on top of that, more intoxication, so then situation becomes quite miserable. Okay, so let's go to text 24. Prayenetad bhagavata ishwarasya vicheshtitam mitho nignanti bhutani bhavayanti chayanmitaha. Factually, this is all due to the supreme will of the Lord, the personality of Godhead. Sometimes people kill one another, and at other times they protect one another. Okay, so he's explaining. So Arjuna is saying that ultimately all this has taken place due to the supreme will of the Lord. So therefore Prabhupada writes in the purport that whenever therefore there is peace in the world, it must be known that it is due to the good will of the Lord, and whenever there is upheaval in the world, it is also due to the supreme will of the Lord. Not a blade of grass moves without the will of the Lord. Whenever therefore there is disobedience of the established rules enacted by the Lord, there is war between men and nations. The surest way to the path of peace, therefore, is dovetailing everything to the established rule of the Lord. And what is that established rule? What do we do? What do we eat? What do we sacrifice? What do we give in charity? Must be done to the full satisfaction of the Lord. Okay, so, and further down he says, discretion is the better part of valor, and one must learn how to discriminate between actions which may be pleasing to the Lord and those which may not be pleasing to the Lord. An action is thus judged by the Lord's pleasure or displeasure. Okay, so that's an important point. So if you want to know whether an action is correct or wrong, then that's the standards on which one decides whether it's pleasing to the Lord or not. And of course, for us to understand whether something is pleasing, we cannot know directly. So then we have to learn through the acharyas. And so therefore that becomes the standard. So therefore, very important to know from the acharyas what pleases the Lord, what doesn't please the Lord. There is no room for personal whims. We must always be guided by the pleasure of the Lord. Such action is called yoga karmasu kaushalam, or actions performed which are linked with the Supreme Lord. That is the art of doing a thing perfect. That's from Bhagavad Gita, yoga karmasu kaushalam. So ultimately everything is dependent on the will of the Lord, and by the will of the Lord, of course, the plan of the Lord is not so easy to understand, as Bhishma Dev speaks about, as he's lying on his deathbed and he sees the Pandavas. Then Bhishma Dev is expressing, Aho anyayam, aho kashtam, you Pandavas, you had everything, but still you had the Supreme Lord on your side, but still you have to go through so much of suffering. Why? All this is due to the plan of the Lord. And nobody can desist the plan of the Lord. It's just like the wind pushing the clouds. But even the greatest of philosophers cannot understand the plan of the Lord. But then yes, but the fact does remain that ultimately everything is happening by the will of the Lord, and for the ultimate benefit of the living entity. Whether we understand that or not immediately, we have to have faith in this fact that ultimately everything is happening by the will of the Lord. And so, as the further verses will come, where it is being explained more explicitly and clearly as to how this entire episode of the Yadus killing each other was definitely orchestrated by the Lord. Okay, fine. This is on the 24th verse. Okay. Okay, somebody can read this. Prabhupada's lecture on this.
So God is not partial, he is impartial. Samoham sarva bhuteshu name dvesho sthina priya. Bhagavad Gita 9.29. Nobody in the material world, just like jail superintendent or the government is not partial. Government is equal to everyone, but everyone is enjoying or suffering according to his own work. So that is reminded and sanction given that this body, this being killed you in your last life. Now I give you sanction, you kill him. This is called nignat, mitho nignati. And this man gave you protection, so you gave him protection. So what is the wrong there? There is nothing wrong. It is equal justice. Because don't think that because God or Krishna gave sanction, Vicheshtitam, therefore he is partial. No, he is always impartial.
Yes, so Prabhupada is explaining here. So even though the Lord may give sanction to one person to kill someone, one person to protect another, but ultimately it's not that the Lord is showing any partiality, but the Lord is equal. Ultimately, it all depends on what we have done in the past, and we are simply getting the result of that. So that's what he's saying. Government is equal to everyone, but everyone is enjoying or suffering according to his own work. And so Prabhupada did quote the English saying that man is the maker of his own destiny. So ultimately, what we are getting is we are reaping the fruits of our own actions. And so therefore, one has to understand that ultimately whatever is happening in my life is only because of my own actions. So we can't blame others. So the usual tendency is to blame others when something goes wrong. Of course, one needs to take guidance and help of higher authorities to decide whether another person is actually doing wrong, or I'm simply getting the fruits of my own activities. Of course, that's always the consciousness of a devotee. Somebody may have apparently done wrong, but then ultimately we understand that he's simply acting as an instrument of my own karma. And so therefore, the higher authorities can decide what needs to be done in that situation as to what is to be done with the instrument of the karma. But then as far as if we are the affected party, then we have to accept the fact that yes, the person simply acts as an instrument. And so why get angry on the instrument? Ultimately, I'm the cause. So that's the point that is being explained here. Sometimes people kill one another, other times they protect one another, but all that is being orchestrated by the Lord, and the Lord is giving that sanction because of the activities which different people have done in their own previous lives. And so therefore, the important lesson for us to learn as to prevent future mishaps in our life is to act on the platform of pleasure of the Lord. So then that's akarma. If we only perform actions which are pleasing to the Lord, then that's akarma, not have any reaction. That's how we can be saved, at least from future reactions. Text 25-26. O king, as in the ocean, the bigger and stronger aquatics swallow up the smaller and weaker ones, so also the Supreme Personality of Godhead to lighten the burden of the earth has engaged the stronger Yadu to kill the weaker and the bigger Yadu to kill the smaller. So the Lord is arranging all this. So Prabhupada is writing how in this material world, everyone wants to become an imitation Lord, and to give facility to such imitation Lords, the illusory energy of the Lord has created disparity between conditioned living beings by creating the stronger and the weaker in every species of life. The mentality of lording it over the material nature and the creation has naturally created disparity and therefore the law of struggle for existence. In the spiritual world, there is no such disparity, nor is there such a struggle for existence, because there everyone exists eternally. Prabhupada in other places also gives the example in this connection of how some people become instruments of causing trouble to other people. So he gives the example of how in a school sometimes if two students are mischievous, and the teacher tells each of them to catch each other's ears and pull. So the one student is pulling the other student's ears, and he gives trouble to the other student gives trouble to him. And so that's how they're causing trouble and pain to each other. And that's what happens in the material world. Everyone wants to become an imitation Lord. Then Maya Devi orchestrates wars and quarrels and fights, and the people give trouble to each other. So that's nature of material existence. So that's how Arjuna has described about the annihilation of the Yadu dynasty. And now finally, Arjuna, to come out of this a pain due to separation from the Supreme Lord, is remembering the Lord's instructions. So text 27, that's an important one. Desha kalartha yuktani rittapo pashamani cha haranti smaratas chittam govinda bihitani me. Now I'm attracted to those instructions imparted to me by the personality of God at Govinda, because they are impregnated with instructions for relieving the burning heart in all circumstances of time and space. Desha kalartha yuktani. So as Prabhupada is explaining the purport, that how the instructions of the Gita are applicable for all time, place, circumstances. So Desha kalartha, for all, in all situations, the instructions of the Gita are important, useful to relieve the suffering condition of humanity. Rittapopashamani cha, the burning of the heart, which basically arises due to the various anarthas within the heart, causing so many different miseries. So that burning within the heart can be relieved. How? Smarata haranti smaratas chittam govinda bihitani. So by remembering the Lord's and his instructions, that's how one can be relieved of the suffering condition of material existence. And that's a universal principle. So it doesn't matter whether it is in India or somewhere else. It doesn't matter whether it was 5,000 years back or it is now. The principle remains the same. The nature of the material world remains the same, and the solution also remains the same. Okay, so therefore, it's not that, oh, the instructions of the Gita were relevant 5,000 years back or 500 years back. Now we've become technologically advanced, so there's needs to be some other way out. No, the solution, the problem remains the same, and the solution remains the same. So Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadhi have always been the problems, and the solution always remains the same, and that is to remember the Lord and his instructions. So Prabhupada gives quite an elaborate commentary to this verse. So just reading a few important statements. Towards the end of the first paragraph, Prabhupada writes, the problem which arose in the heart of Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra was solved by the teachings of Bhagavad Gita. Again, after the departure of the Lord from the vision of earthly people, when Arjuna was face to face with being vanquished in his acquired power and prominence, he wanted again to remember the great teachings of Bhagavad Gita, just to teach all concerned that Bhagavad Gita can be consulted in all critical times, not only for solace from all kinds of mental agonies, but also for the way out of great entanglements which may embarrass one in some critical hour. Okay, so on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, Arjuna was in a crisis. Now again, he's in a crisis, but the solution remains the same. And towards the end of the second paragraph, Prabhupada writes, thus the Bhagavad Gita or any authentic scriptural sound representation of the Lord is also the incarnation of the Lord. There is no difference between the sound representation of the Lord and the Lord himself. One can derive the same benefit from the Bhagavad Gita as Arjuna did in the personal presence of the Lord. Okay, so when he heard the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna was in personal presence of the Lord. Now the Lord has disappeared, but then he's remembering the instructions of the Lord, but then everything is on an absolute platform. So remembering the instructions of the Lord is as good as remembering the Lord. And as Prabhupada said it so many times, so as far as we are concerned, even though for us the Lord may not be personally present, but by reading the Bhagavad Gita as it is, given by Srila Prabhupada and Parampara, then we derive the same benefits. So therefore, what's important is to have faith in this fact that yes, we can derive the same benefits. And that's what Prabhupada writes at the beginning of the third paragraph. The faithful human being who is desirous of being liberated from the clutches of material existence can very easily take advantage of Bhagavad Gita. And with this in view, the Lord instructed Arjuna as if Arjuna were in need of it. Then is describing the important subject matters of the Gita. And towards the end of that purport, Prabhupada writes, the Bhagavad Gita begins with the problems of life by discriminating the soul from the elements of matter and proves by all reason and argument that the soul is indestructible in all circumstances and that the outer covering of matter, the body and the mind, change for another term of material existence which is full of miseries. The Bhagavad Gita is therefore meant for terminating all different types of miseries, and Arjuna took shelter of this great knowledge which had been imparted to him during the Kurukshetra battle. Okay, somebody can read this from the screen.
So Arjuna was disturbed in so many ways, but as soon as he began to think of Krishna's lotus feet, immediately everything became pacified. This is the process. This transcendental consciousness or transcendental meditation immediately, without any delay, for a moment, you will feel completely pacified. Therefore, Krishna advises, always manmana, always engage your mind upon me. This deity worship means to train the neophyte devotees how to concentrate upon the form of Krishna, especially his lotus feet. That will make our life pacified always. Santa, Santa, pacified, peaceful. Another point is Sohrdena, very deep intimacy. We have got already our relationship with Krishna. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Suhridam sarva bhutanam gyatva mam santim rikshati. We are seeking after friends who can give me some benefit, who can give me some peace of mind. You are reading so many books, so many, consulting so many philosophers, scientists searching out peace of mind. But we are forgetting that our real Suhrit friend is Krishna.
Okay, so this is actually based on the next verse. So we will just recite the next verse. Sutta uvacha evam chintayato jishno Krishnapada saroruham sauhardenati ghadena shanta vimalamati. So the Goswami said, thus being deeply absorbed in thinking of the instructions of the Lord, which were imparted in the great intimacy of friendship, and in thinking of his lotus feet, Arjuna's mind became pacified and freed from all material contamination. So, evam chintayato jishno. So he was thinking, chintan. So what was his chintan? The subject matter of his chintan was Krishna pada saroruham. Krishna pada saroruham. So the lotus feet of the Lord. So, and so he had got the instructions from the Lord. Sauhardenati ghadena. So in great intimacy of friendship, he had got those instructions, and he remembered those instructions which were given by the Lord, and as a result, shanta sit vimalamati. So his mind became peaceful and without any material contamination, free from all material contamination. So that's the way, as Prabhupada is explaining here, that's the way to become pacified, to become peaceful. So the mind has to focus on the lotus feet of the Lord, which of course means it includes everything else in connection to the Lord. It includes the holy name, nama, rupa, guna, lila, everything else. So when the mind is fixed on that, manmana bhavat bhakto, that's how one can actually become peaceful and satisfied. So because Krishna is the real Surat, the real friend, and he can give that total satisfaction. So there's no other way by which one can actually find peace and satisfaction. So one may try so many other ways, but unless and until we learn to fix the mind on Krishna and Krishna consciousness, the mind is always going to be very, very fickle, very, very disturbed. As Arjuna is saying, Chanchalam himana Krishna pramati balavadridam tasyaham nigramane vayurevasadushkaram. So the mind is always going to create so much of trouble in this material world. But then if we want that mind to be peaceful, then the only way is to fix that mind on Krishna. And so therefore, Srila Prabhupada writes in other places, one has to train the mind. One has to train the mind to be fixed on Krishna. That's what Rupa Goswami also speaks in the eighth verse of the Nectar of Instruction. The essence of all advice, the essence of all advice is to fix the mind on Krishna. So therefore, that's one of the most important aspects of Krishna consciousness, is to try and fix the subtle body on Krishna. The solution which Krishna gives to Arjuna in dealing with the mind is abhyasena tu kaunteya vairagyena cha guriyate. So the abhyas, the constant practice has to be there. The training of the mind, as Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur said, beating the mind with shoes in the morning and brooms in the evening. So that's the training of the mind. So the mind is trying to focus on so many different subject matters, but then bring the mind yato nishalti manaschanchalam astiram tatastato niyamyetat. So wherever the mind goes, try to bring it back. In the fourth canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, and Narad Muni's talks with King Prachin Barishad, Narad Muni describes in great details about the nature of the subtle body and especially the mind, and how the mind is responsible for future material bodies. So there he explains, and Prabhupada has explained the purports, that how the mind is filled with so many impressions since innumerable lifetimes, and there are all these material desires within the mind. Prabhupada says in a stockpile, they're all stocked up, all the desires since time immemorial. And to fulfill each of those desires, one has to accept a material body. So that's what is going on in material life. And so therefore, to put an end to that stockpile of material desires is something which is very important. And ultimately, it is the subtle body which creates the next gross body. Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam. So what's the subtle body is thinking of, that's going to create the next body. And so therefore, devotional service Krishna consciousness is not simply about engaging the external or the physical body in Krishna's service, but it also involves engaging the mind. Therefore, Krishna said, man mana. So therefore, it's important that we not do services simply mechanically, but also try to engage the mind in Krishna's service, to focus the mind in trying to remember Krishna. So everything could be done mechanically, whether it is chanting, whether it is hearing, or our various services, we could do them mechanically, or we could do them investing our consciousness, which essentially means for us investing our mind and intelligence in trying to remember Krishna. So you can read those purports in the fourth canto. Elaborately, Narad Muni is explaining, Srila Prabhupada is explaining. So therefore, as Krishna also told Arjuna, 8th chapter, 7th verse, Mam anusmara yudhyacha. He didn't just tell him to fight. He said, remembering me, fight. That makes the difference. Otherwise, even Duryodhana was fighting, so many other people were fighting. But what made the difference is remembering me. That makes the difference. And so, Krishna consciousness, that means we have to be conscious of Krishna as we are performing our various activities, not mechanically. Then that's how we are able to remember Krishna, or we practice to remember Krishna, and that is what will help us not get another material body. And that's what pacifies the mind, and that's how the mind becomes peaceful. So Krishna Pada Sarora, that should be the subject matter of our chintan. So Prabhupada writes in his purport that the Lord is like the sun. The sun's appearance means immediate dissipation of darkness or ignorance, and the Lord's appearance when the mind of the devotee can at once drive away the miserable material effects. Lord Chaitanya has therefore recommended constant chanting of the name of the Lord for protection from all contamination of the material world. The feeling of separation from the Lord is undoubtedly painful to the devotee, but because it is in connection with the Lord, it has a specific transcendental effect which pacifies the hearts. Feelings of separation are also sources of transcendental bliss, and they're never comparable to contaminated material feelings of separation. So this is the difference between transcendental feelings of separation, material feelings of separation. So we have all the examples of the gopis and Mother Sita, and so many examples in the Chaitanya Charitamrita of deep feelings of separation. But because they're in connection to the Lord, then those feelings of separation, viraha prem, so that also becomes the cause of great transcendental ecstasy, because in those feelings of separation, one remembers the Lord more intensely, and by remembering the Lord more intensely, that actually causes transcendental ecstasy, unlike material feelings of separation, which cause great pain. So Arjuna, because he's remembering the Lord in the feelings of separation, actually is experiencing that transcendental ecstasy. As I said in the next verse, text 29, Vasudevangri anudhyana paribhrimita ramhasa bhaktya nirmati shesha kashaya dishanorjuna. Arjuna's constant remembrance of the lotus feet of Lord Sri Krishna rapidly increased his devotion, and as a result, all the trash in his thoughts subsided. Okay, so because of the Vasudeva Angri Anudhyana, the constant remembrance of the lotus feet of the Lord. So, Paribhrimita Ramhasa, in the word to word, Prabhupada writes Ramhasa as with great velocity. So with great speed, with great velocity, what happened? Bhaktya, the bhakti increased, because that's what happens when one remembers the Lord, the bhakti increases. The bhakti increased, paribhrimita expanded or increased. The bhakti increased, and when bhakti increases, then something decreases. What is that? Nirmatitha, that means subsided. What subsided? Ashesha Kashaya. So the unlimited trash, proper translates, unlimited trash. That's what decreased. So, as we know, the famous verse where in the 11th canto describing the effects of the practice of devotional service, tushti, pushti, kshudapai. Those are the effects when one eats food. One experiences satisfaction, one experiences great nourishment and strength, and then a cessation of hunger. So similarly, when one practices devotional service, then tushti is analogous to bhakti. So the bhakti increases, the love and devotion increases towards the Lord. The pushti is compared to pareshanubhava, that is a direct experience of the Supreme Lord, linked to increase in faith, that gives the nourishment. And then when these two are there, then automatically there's going to be virakti, that is detachment from all that is material. So that's what we see here happening to Arjuna. As is remembering the lotus feet of the Lord, the bhakti is increasing, and then all the material contamination is decreasing. That is, the virakti is what's happening. As Prabhupada writes in the purport, material desires in the mind are the trash of material contamination. Okay, so that's what is the trash, all the material desires. Right. So birth after birth, the conditioned soul is entrapped with so many pleasing and displeasing images. Okay. And as soon as Arjuna turned his attention towards the instructions of the Lord as they are inculcated in Bhagavad Gita, his true color of eternal association with the Lord became manifest, and thus he felt freed from all material contaminations. So this is 28th verse. Okay, fine. Okay, so this Prabhupada is speaking about Bhagavad Gita here in connection to the 28th verse. Okay, fine. Somebody can read this, please.
Remember Bhagavad Gita. Apane Achari Prabhu Jivera Shikhaye. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that you have to act accordingly as it is instructed. Apane Achari. Then you can teach others. If you do not act yourself, your words will have no value. Evam parampara praptam. If you have got connection with the original powerhouse, then there is electricity. Otherwise, it is simply wire. What is the value? Simply wiring will not help you. The connection must be there. And if you lose the connection, then it is of no value. Therefore, Krishna consciousness movement means you have to keep yourself always connected with the original powerhouse. Then wherever you will go, there will be light. There will be light. If you're disconnected, there will be no light. The bulb is there, the wiring is there, the switch is there, everything is there.
Continue, please.
That is how Arjuna is feeling, that I am the same Arjuna. I am the same Arjuna who fought in the battlefield of Kurukshetra. I was known as so great a warrior, and my bow is the same bow, and my arrow is the same arrow, but now it is useless. I could not defend myself because disconnected with Krishna. Krishna is no longer. Therefore, he began to remember the words of Krishna, which was taught to him in the battle of Kurukshetra. Krishna is not different from his words. That is absolute. What Krishna said 5,000 years ago, if you catch up those words again, you will immediately connected with Krishna. Immediately. That is the process. Just see Arjuna. He says, Evam chintayato jishnoho Krishna pada saroruham. When he began to think of Krishna and his instruction as in the battlefield, immediately he becomes shanta, peaceful, immediately pacified. That is the process. We have got intimate relationship with Krishna eternally. It is not artificial. Therefore, if you keep ourselves always connected with Krishna, there will be no more disturbance, peaceful.
Yes. So an important point Srila Prabhupada is saying over here is two things. One thing is Apani Achari Prabhu Jivera Shikhai. So if you do not act yourself, your words will have no value. So if we want our preaching to be effective, then it's very important that we try to ourselves act, or we walk our talk. So whatever we are preaching, we also try to practice ourselves. Then there'll be potency in what we preach. That's what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he acted as a devotee to teach others, teach all others how to become a devotee through his own example. And so he says, if you do not act yourself, your words will have no value. So at least, of course, we may not be perfect, but at least we must be sincerely trying to act on what we are speaking. Otherwise, if people see a total hypocrisy, then no one would be inspired to take up the process. And so therefore, as Mahaprabhu also said, dharma sthapan hetu sadhura vyavhar. The principles of religion are established by the behavior of a sadhu. And so therefore, the behavior and trying to follow the instruction is important. And that's the reason why so many people became attracted to Srila Prabhupada, because they could see a person who is actually following what he's speaking. That's one point. And the other important point is that whatever we preach must have connection to the parampara. And Prabhupada is going to give a famous example of the bulb may be there, the wire may be there, everything may be there, but if the connection is not there, useless. It could be beautiful chandelier or whatever it may be, the most costly bulbs and everything could be there, but if the connection is not there, it's all useless. And so therefore we could speak bombastic words, we could speak very eloquently, we could quote so many Sanskrit verses, we could do so many things. But if it is not in line with the parampara, then it's not going to have much effect, simply empty bullets. And so therefore it's very important, evam parampara praptam. And therefore it's very important that we present the message of the parampara as it is, as Prabhupada repeated so many times, no addition, no subtraction, no concoction, simply repeats. Very often Prabhupada would quote Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the instruction that is, Yare deko tariko Krishna upadesh, amar ajnai guru hoi tara ye desh. So Prabhupada would say, repeat Krishna upadesh, don't give your own upadesh. So that's what's important, that we simply repeat Krishna's words, coming from the perfect source, from a person free of the 4 defects. And so when we repeat the same words coming from the perfect source, then the words will have potency. And so therefore, if you lose the connection, then it is of no value. The connection must be there. And so that's the importance of repeating the words of parampara as a sampradaya vina mantrasya nishphalamata. Okay, so, and then if we remember those instructions, we repeat those instructions, then yes, then the mind becomes immediately pacified. Okay, read this.
Remember Bhagavad Gita. So spiritual life means anxiety less.
Prabhu, sorry, sorry to interrupt. Have you read the previous one also? Now, if you have read the previous one, we could give chance to somebody else, please, to read.
So spiritual life means anxiety less. This is the difference between the matter life and the spiritual life. Brahma Bhuta Prasannatma. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is described what is spiritual life. As soon as you identify with the absolute truth, Brahman, then symptoms will be Prasannatma, jubilation. Oh, I do not belong to this material world. I belong to spiritual world. I am part and parcel of Krishna. Why should I suffer so many things? That is jubilation. Brahma Bhuta Prasannatma. The Prasannatma means no sachati, no kankshati. He has no lamentation, no hankering. Here people are always full of the anxiety because they have got hankering. I want this, I want that.
Continue, please.
And that is lamentations. That they possess. It is.
If it is.
If it is lost, then cry. Oh, my things are lost. And what they do not possess, they hanker. So their anxiety is there, either he possesses or not possesses. This is material anxiety. If you have no money, then you will hanker after money. How to get money, how to get money, how to get money. And when you get money, then how to utilize it. How to, where to keep it. In the bank or in the house, or who will take away. Somebody will take away. So where is anxiety less? You possess or not possess. The real disease is anxiety. So when one becomes Brahma Bhuta, self-realizes, identified with the absolute truth, then he has no more anxiety. This is the best education when you becomes anxiety-less. That is the perfection of education.
Okay, so yeah, so one can become anxiety-less. That's the Brahma Bhuta platform when one takes to devotional service. So that's what is being described in the 29th verse by constant remembrance of the lotus feet of the Lord Vasudevangri Anudhyana. Then, yes, then one becomes free from all these material anxieties. Okay, let's go to text 30. Geetam Bhagavata Jnanam Yattat Sangrama Murdhani Kala Karma Tamoruddham Punar Adhyakamat Prabhu. Because of the Lord's pastimes and activities, and because of his absence, it appeared that Arjuna forgot the instruction left by the personality of Godhead. But factually, this was not the case, and again he became Lord of his senses. So it appeared as if he forgot, but actually that was not the case because Arjuna was always remembering Krishna. So Prabhupada writes in the purport, all the pastimes or activities of the Lord are spiritual in nature, but to the layman, they appear to be on the same level with material activities. It so appeared that Arjuna and the Lord were engaged in the battle of Kurukshetra as the other party was also engaged, but factually the Lord was executing his mission of incarnation and association with his eternal friend Arjuna. Therefore, such apparently material activities of Arjuna did not drive him away from his transcendental position, but on the contrary, revived his consciousness of the songs of the Lord. So the point is that Arjuna was fighting and so many other people were also fighting because Arjuna was fighting on the instruction of the Lord, so that activity of fighting was as good as remembering the Lord. And then again, Prabhupada is quoting Manmana Bhaman Bhakto. And then finally, last paragraph, Prabhupada says, Arjuna had no desire to fight with his relatives, but he fought for the mission of the Lord. He was always engaged in the execution of his mission only. And therefore, after the Lord's departure, he remained in the same transcendental position, even though it appeared that he forgot all the instructions of the Bhagavad Gita. One should therefore adjust the activities of life in pace with the mission of the Lord. And by doing this, one is sure to return back home, back to God. That's the highest perfection of life. So So in spiritual life, everything is on the absolute platform. So one may be serving the mission, and so even though one may not directly remember the Lord, but because one is serving the mission, of course, directly remembering the Lord is also important. But then in any case, if one is serving the mission of the Lord, then that is as good as remembering the Lord. And so therefore, in that sense, Arjuna, because he was serving the mission of the Lord, he was fighting for the Lord. So therefore, he actually never forgot the instructions of the Lord, even though apparently it appeared so. Okay, Prabhupada's quote on this verse. Okay, read.
Remember Bhagavad Gita. This is the secret. Yasya deve para bhakti yatha deve tatha guru. If one has strong faith in the Supreme Personality of Godhead and as much faith in the Guru, yatha deve tatha guru, then the revealed scriptures become manifest. It is not the education. It is not the scholarship. It is faith in Krishna and Guru. Therefore, Chaitanya Charitamrita says, Guru Krishna kripaya paya bhakti lata bij. Not by education, not by scholarship, never says. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, Guru Krishna kripaya, by the mercy of Guru, by the mercy of Krishna. It is a question of mercy. It is not a question of scholarship or opulence or richness. No. The whole bhakti marg depends on the mercy of Lord. So we have to seek the mercy. Athapi te dev padam bhuja dvaya prasad lesa anugrihit evahi janati tattvam prasad lesha. Lesha means fraction. One who has received a little fraction of mercy of the Supreme, he can understand. Others, na channe ekopi chiram vichinvan. Others, they may go on speculating for millions of years. It is not possible to understand. So Bhagavad Gita as it is. Therefore, we are presenting because we are presenting Bhagavad Gita as it was understood by Arjuna. We do not go to Dr. Radhakrishnan, this scholar, that scholar, this rascal, that. No, we do not go. That is not our business. That is parampara.
So here, Prabhupada is making the important point that how our understanding of the script, we were discussing this last time also, our understanding of the scriptures and the application of the scripture depends so much on mercy. So it's not scholarship, not by education, not by scholarship. It's a question of mercy. It's not a question of scholarship or opulence or richness. The whole bhakti marg depends on the mercy of the Lord. So we have to seek the mercy. So this is an important point. So therefore, that's what happens when one is in the mission of the Lord. That's what Prabhupada is explaining in the purport to this 30th verse. That Arjuna, because he was fighting on behalf of the Lord, he was in the mission of the Lord. And so therefore, he actually was never separate from the instructions of the Lord. Srila Prabhupada also said that even though I met my Guru Maharaj only 6 or 7 times in this life, but actually there was not a single moment when I was away from my Guru Maharaj, because I was always remembering his instructions. So that's what happens when one is in the mission of the Lord, one is actually serving the instructions of the Lord, and that's how that attracts the mercy of the Lord. And so therefore, that should always be our focus. The focus should always be on how to attract the mercy. By serving the Guru, by serving the Vaishnavas, by serving the Acharyas, by serving the mission of the Acharya. So recently we were hearing a class of His Holiness Giraj Maharaj, and he was speaking about reading Prabhupada books regularly. And so, of course, that reading is definitely very important. There's no doubt about it, because Prabhupada wanted us to read the books regularly. At the same time, serving the mission of the Prabhupada, that is serving ISKCON, is also very, very important. So he was saying that how once when he was in Calcutta temple, so early days, they're very busy, had no time to read the books. And So Giraj Maharaj was thinking that he was feeling a sort of guilty that he's not reading Prabhupada books regularly. So one day, when he went to meet Srila Prabhupada on his own accord, without even being asked, Prabhupada said, if one is serving the person Bhagavat, it is as good as reading the book Bhagavat. So Prabhupada just made that statement as if understanding Giraj Maharaj's minds. But then Maharaj understood the point. So the point is that, yes, of course, one should not again go to the to another end of fanaticism, and that is take a wrong message and think that, oh, there's no need to read the books as long as one is serving. Reading the books is also a service. But then, of course, those were special circumstances in the early days of ISKCON when devotees were very busy. But then now situation is much more stable, and so therefore that balanced program of reading, hearing, but at the same time serving the mission of Guru and Krishna is also very important, because then that attracts the mercy. Shushrushoshadhanasya vasudeva kadaruchi syan mahat sevaya viprapunyatita nishe. So by mahat seva, that attracts the mercy, and then one gets vasudeva kadaruchi. And so therefore, that serving the mission to attract the mercy of the Guru and the Acharyas is very important, because as Prabhupada says, the whole Bhakti Marg depends on the mercy of the Lord. So we have to seek the mercy. Otherwise, we may read volumes and volumes of books, and we may get some theoretical knowledge which will only make us proud, but we won't have the empowerment to practice anything within our lives, because that requires mercy. And so therefore, trying to attract that mercy by sincere service attitude is something which is very important. Okay. So Arjuna was always remembering the instructions of the Lord, though apparently it appeared that he forgot. And now he is actually remembering those instructions once again. And then what was the result of that? Text 31. Vishoko Brahma Sampatya Sanchina Dvaita Samshayah Lina Prakriti Nirgunyad Alingatvad Asambhavaha. Because of his possessing spiritual assets, the doubts of duality were completely cut off. Thus he was freed from the three modes of material nature and placed in transcendence. There was no longer any chance of his becoming entangled in birth and death, for he was freed from material form. So this is the results of remembering the Lord and remembering his instructions. Vishoko Brahma Sampatya. So because of the Brahma Sampatya, Brahma Sampatti means possessing spiritual assets. Because of that, Vishoka, he became free from all the shoka. He became free from all the lamentation. And then what happened? Sanchina Dvaita Samshaya. Sanchina, all the Dvaita, all the dualities of material existence were cut off. And Lina Prakriti Nirgunyat. So he came to the Nirgun platform, the transcendental platform. And he became Alingatvat. He became free from the material body or the material conception. So he became free from the material conception, and his consciousness rose to the transcendental platform or the Nirgun platform. And as a result of that, then Asambhava, the word comes in the Ishopanishad, Sambhavat and Asambhavat. So he became free from birth and death. So that's how basically Arjuna, by remembering the Lord, became free from the material bodily conception and rose to the transcendental Nirgun platform. And that's the result of devotional service, as explained in Bhagavad Gita, Mam Chuyabjarena Bhakti Yogena Sevate Sa Gunan Samatityetan Brahma Bhuyaya Kalpate. So one, same thing is being said here, Brahma Sampatya. So one achieves the spiritual assets or the Brahman platform, and one becomes free from the bodily concept of life or the material platform or the influence of the three gunas. And that's what Prabhupada writes in the middle of this purport. As soon as Arjuna took up the instructions of the Bhagavad Gita, expert as he was, he could at once eradicate the material conception of Lord Krishna, as eternal friends. He could realize that the Lord was still present before him by his instruction, by his form, by his pastimes, by his qualities, and everything else related to him. He could realize that Lord Krishna, his friend, was still present. So then he got a proper realization of Krishna's transcendental position. Unlike any material person who goes away, then he's gone. But then in the case of the Lord, because in the transcendental platform, everything is absolute. And so even though he may have physically disappeared, but by remembering the instructions, he could actually feel the presence of the Lord. That's the transcendental platform. So therefore, Prabhupada writes further on, by attainment of absolute knowledge, one can be in association with the Lord constantly, even in this present life, simply by hearing, chanting, thinking of, and worshipping the Supreme Lord. One can see him, one can feel his presence, even in this present life, simply by understanding the Advaya Jnana Lord, or the absolute Lord, through the process of devotional service, which begins with hearing about him. Okay, so that's what we are doing right now. So right now we are discussing the Bhagavatam, we are discussing the pastimes of the Lord and his devotees, and this is as good as being in direct connection with the Lord, in the direct presence of the Lord. And so that's the benefit that we are receiving by the Shravanam and Kirtanam. We are actually feeling the presence of the Lord, we are in the association with the Lord, and that's how these effects which Arjuna experienced, and that is rising above the material conception and rising to the transcendental platform, those effects can be experienced by us also right now as we are listening to the Bhagavad Gita and the Bhagavatam. It all depends upon our sincerity of Shravanam Kirtanam and how much we are being attentive to the sound vibration. To the degree we are attentive, as you can recollect the purport in the last verse of the 3rd chapter of the 1st canto, there Srila Prabhupada explains that yes, one can see Krishna in every page, in every word of the Srimad Bhagavatam. It all depends upon how much we are attentive. So to the degree we are attentive, then we can realize the presence of Krishna in every word of the Srimad Bhagavatam, because it is Advaya Gyan. It is absolute, non-dual. Right, further down, almost towards the end of the purport, Prabhupada writes, by the grace of the Lord, a pure devotee is at once raised to the place of the absolute, and there is no chance of the devotees becoming materially entangled again in conditioned life. One is not able to feel the presence of the Lord in all circumstances until one is endowed with the required transcendental vision made possible by devotional service prescribed in the revealed scriptures. Arjuna had attained this stage long before on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, and when apparently felt the absence of the Lord, he at once took shelter of the instructions of the Bhagavad Gita, and thus again he was placed in his original position. This is the position of Vishoka, or the stage of being freed from all grief and anxieties. As you may have discussed the verse in the 7th chapter of this 1st canto, Yasyam vai shruyamanayam Krishne paramapurushe bhaktir utpatite pumsa shoka moha bhaya apaha. So that's what happens when one hears Yasyam vai shruyamanayam, when one hears about Krishna paramapurushe, then shoka moha bhaya, all these are eradicated, and that's what Arjuna is experiencing over here. Okay, so this is basically this section of Arjuna remembering the empowerment which he received from the Lord in so many different activities, and then he also was remembering the disappearance of the Yodha dynasty, and then finally to get free from the shoka, this lamentation from the feelings of separation, he remembered the instructions of the Bhagavad Gita, and thus he became free from all shoka. Okay, so that's the end of this section, and then we'll go to the next section. So Okay, fine. So are there any questions before we go to the next section?
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Are you able to hear me, Prabhu?
Yes, very clearly.
Yeah. So basically, previously in the one of the purport that you have shown, purport is mentioning that Krishna gives the idea also, like somebody has done something wrong to you and you have to kill him. That is shown as an example to show that Krishna is in control. But
yes.
So in that relation, I want to have in some other angle that sometimes we hear, many times we hear that mind is giving us some suggestions, but at the same time, most of the times we don't feel the initiative with Paramatma's direction that is not visible or audible.
Mm-hmm.
So is it at what stage one will understand that what is good, what is not good? Is that through the intelligence when it is sharpened, or is it like in advanced stage one will directly hear Paramatma's direction? So how do you distinguish between minds that telling us and Paramatma telling us?
Okay, so fine. So essentially your question is how do we distinguish between the mind's words and the Paramatma's words?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So, of course, Srila Prabhupada explains Tesham satayuktanam bhajatam pritipurvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mamapi yanti te. So in lectures on those verses, Srila Prabhupada explains that so yes, Krishna does speak directly, but to whom? Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam pritipurvakam. So one who is satata, constantly 24 hours engaged with great love and devotion, then yes, then one can directly hear the words of the Paramatma. As far as we are concerned in a more conditioned state or sadhakas where we're trying to practice devotional service. So of course the Paramatma is always giving us instructions, but then the Paramatma's words could be sort of eclipsed by the mind's words. And so therefore, it may be difficult for us to distinguish. And therefore, what's important for us is that we confirm. So we may be thinking, oh, is it Paramatma's words, mind's words? And so therefore, for us, the safe path is always to confirm from Guru, Sadhva, and Shastra. That's the process that has been given to us. And that's the safe path. So then, even though it may be Paramatma's words, but we are not sure. So therefore, it's always best to confirm with higher authorities, and then it becomes clear.
Okay, thank you, bro.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhu, so here it was written that Arjun became free from contamination by remembering the instructions of Bhagavad Gita. So, but as we know that Arjun is a very great devotee of the Lord, and generally what I was having understanding that they are always free from contaminations. So in Bhagavad Gita time, it was by Lord's arrangement that he was put into kind of bewilderment so that Bhagavad Gita can be spoken.
Right.
It seems here again he is getting overcome by some contaminations. So how is it? And is it that then like this, is it that our even great pure devotees or acharyas who are present, they also get overcome by temporarily by sometimes some contaminations? Is it like that?
Okay. Good question by Amshu Prabhu. Maybe I could read directly. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has explained this in his commentary, and he has so if you just give me a second, then maybe I could read that commentary directly, so that I'm not speculating. Just hold on a second. Okay, this is verse number 31, right?
28.
28. Okay, free from all material.
— 31 also similar, Prabhuji.
Yeah, that's right. Now, this is Vishnu Thakur's explanation. So, this to 29th verse. But the word mala means things, contaminations like lust. That is true. But because Arjuna is not just an associate of the Lord, but the avatar Nara, it is impossible for him to have such contamination. But perhaps we can say that his being an amsha of Indra can have contamination. Then he says that also cannot be. This verse explains. Arjuna had intelligence, Dishana, completely free, nirmatit, of all contaminations, kashaya, such as lust, from the very beginning by bhakti which appeared from his birth. This is what he's saying to text 29. So from what Vishnu Thakur is saying that, so basically Arjuna, he cannot have any contamination from the very beginning by bhakti which appeared from his birth. So, so then, but he's giving perhaps we can say that his being an amsha of Indra can have contamination. So maybe we can understand that as a pastime in this material world, as a pastime. So as an eternal associate of the Lord, definitely no contamination. But as a pastime in this material world, then just like on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, it's like a Leela. So then we could understand that in that sense, maybe some contamination. I mean, that's all we could say. That's what the acharyas are saying. So I cannot give any other explanation because Prabhupada has not given anything very specifically. And that's what.
Krishna.
Yeah, if somebody else wants to add something.
Yes, Prabhuji, like this, there's similar cases in many of the great souls, like even Vyasdev was under dilemma after that. So that it happens with many devotees and many times.
Yeah, everything has a purpose.
But so it is out of Leela, we can say, and so that Krishna, like in case of Vyasdev, so that Bhagavatam could come, or here we can say that so that we are taught the lesson of remembrance of Krishna can free us of contamination. Same way Prabhupada in the Bhagavad Gita, he writes that how Arjuna is although a pure devotee, but still he's under doubt.
Yeah, that's as far as Bhagavad Gita is concerned. Yes, that point is very clear that Arjuna is put in that situation by the will of the Lord.
Yeah, yes. And same way, Yudhishthira Maharaj is asking question that Lord is partial, how to understand this. So say, we see these cases in many pure devotees. They are all pure devotees. So it's to teach us lesson.
Right. So is that okay? So Amshu Prabhu, is that okay?
Hare Krishna. Prabhuji, in this same question, half part of the question was when it comes to the current acharyas. Like when, okay, this, what we hear in Bhagavatam, that is okay. but when we see Acharya is present or present, so when we see certain situation in the, so how to understand?
Okay, so what are you referring to in the context of present acharyas?
I mean, if we see certain defects or the same material contamination, then we also see them in this light, or we should try to.
Definitely, it depends on what you are referring to, because as Srila Prabhupada explains and devotees explain in this connection, so when it is said, Sakshad Haritvena Samasta Shastre, so the Acharya is as good as Hari. So why is called as good as Hari?
Because he is not Hari, but he is representing Hari.
Yes, so how is he representing Hari?
Because he is transferring the mercy of the Lord.
How?
And carrying the qualities of the Lord to a minor. It's like repeating
more specific. How is he as good as Hari? How is he representing the Lord?
Because he's exactly representing the message of parampara.
Exactly, that's correct. So he is repeating the words of Hari, which are non-different from Hari, and therefore he's as good as Hari. Right? And so therefore, that is the perfection of the Acharya. The perfection of the Acharya is in presenting the spiritual message as it is, the message of God as it is. So we cannot expect material perfections from the Acharya. So because even the Acharya has a material body, and a material body is subjected to some imperfections, could be subjected to some imperfections. So we find even the Acharya could forget some things, just like we find Srila Prabhupada in some, he forgets some verse in between, he asks, what is that verse? So that's not a fault, because after all, the material body, and so the material body is going to have some imperfections. And so we cannot expect the Acharya to be perfect in all material, so many material talents, skills. We can't expect him to be perfect in management and driving a car or knowing how to construct buildings and things like that. So that's not the perfection of the Acharya. The perfection of the Acharya is in presenting the spiritual message as it is. That's his perfection. And that's what should be our expectation. We can't expect him to be perfect in everything. So yes, so then for other things, yes, there are other people who could be consulted. So our expectation from the Acharya cannot be perfection in everything. Is that point clear?
Yes. Prabhuji, just something related to this point. As you were saying that the Acharya, he represents the words of the message of the Lord perfectly, as the Lord says. Now when we talk of ourselves, means like those who are in the bodily concept of life, they have a material conception. So how do they actually get the ability to exactly represent, means how can we exactly get the ability to represent the words of the parampara? That means that as long as we are not out of the bodily concept of life, that means till the point we are in we have a material conception, we'll surely will not be able to repeat also the message of the parampara.
Why? What's the problem in repeating?
Because we have our vision is, our conception is material.
Conception may material, but we can repeat. Prabhupada gives simple example that just like there is microphone, and father tells the child, this is microphone. And then somebody asks the child, what is this? He repeats, this is microphone. He may not even understand what is microphone, how it works and all that. But he simply repeats. So that is that, and that's what Srila Prabhupada told so many times. Simply repeat. That's all. So even when Prabhupada was asked, are you perfect? Prabhupada said, no, I'm not perfect. But the message I'm repeating, that is perfect because it's coming from the perfect source. So that is the whole point on maintaining the transparency of the message. So to the degree we simply repeat the Acharya's words as it is. And that's what Srila Prabhupada again said so many times. People say, I've done great miracle, but I've not done any miracle. nor am I a big scholar or anything. My only qualification is that I have simply repeated the words of my Guru Maharaj. So that is what we are also supposed to do, simply repeat. So yes, we may still be in the bodily conception, but what's the problem in repeating? So we hear, we read, and we repeat.
हरे कृष्ण प्रभु जी, दिस इज दिरशन दास.
Yes, Prabhu.
प्रभु जी, ये जो तो वो प्रश्न ऐसा था कि उनको हमारा पहला प्रश्न अंशु प्रभु का था, तो कंटामिनेशन का था, अमल इधर बोला था, और इनको भी वही था कि करंट आचार्य के बारे में हम कैसा जान ले. तो अपने थोड़ा डिस्कशन थोड़ा सा साइड लिया. तो हाँ, कि अपने दूसरा उदाहरण, लेकिन इनका कहना था कि ये जो अर्जुन का जो कंटामिनेशन है, तो वो अभी हम करंट आचार्य में कैसा देखे, अगर कुछ ऐसा होता है तो, कि वैसा ही देखे या कुछ अलग देखे.
नहीं, लेकिन पॉइंट यह है कि वो कंटेमिनेशन क्या है. वो आध्यात्मिक चीजों में कुछ कंटेमिनेशन है या भौतिक चीजों में कुछ कंटेमिनेशन है, मतलब या कुछ भौतिक चीजों के बारे में नहीं जानते हैं या वैसा कुछ है, या आध्यात्मिक ज्ञान में कुछ त्रुटियां हैं, तो क्या प्रॉब्लम है, उस पर डिपेंड करता है.
हाँ, तो अभी कि हम तो हमारा एफर्ट डालते कि जब में हम सो रहे, जब में हम नहीं सो रहे, हमें सोने का इच्छा नहीं रहता है, तो भी हम देखते हैं कि कभी कभी बड़े आचार्य है या बड़े अथॉरिटी है, या हम भी बहुत साल, 20 साल 25 साल से भक्ति में है, तो भी जपा में बैठने के बाद नींद आता है. तो ये जो कंफ्यूजन है छोटा है, कि कभी कभी हम ऐसा ही देखते हैं कि 30 साल से 35 साल से कोई भक्ति में है, सोना वाला सब कुछ कर रहा है, लेकिन उसके बाद भी उनकी कोई मटेरियल डिजायर आती है, जैसे कि शादी करना या करना. तो इसको हम, अगर आप बोल रहे कि उसको हमें वो देखना नहीं, क्योंकि ये मटेरियल बॉडी है, हमें उसका ये देखना है कि वो आचार्य का जो परंपरा है उसको एज इट इज रिपीट कर रहे हैं.
सही बात.
हाँ, लेकिन फिर हम ऐसा क्यों करते कि अगर कोई बड़ा एक खंडा आचार्य है और उन्होंने आश्रम चेंज कर लिया, तो वो तो एज इट इज रिप्रेजेंट कर रहे प्रभुपाद को या परंपरा को, वही लेक्चर दे रहे, लेकिन उनको हम फिर वो लेक्चर नहीं देने देते या थोड़ा देर बाहर रखते. ऐसा क्यों? वो तो बॉडी का कंटामिनेशन है, उन्होंने शादी किया, लस्ट आया, ये, लेकिन रिपीट तो वही कर रहे हैं ना.
ठीक है, ठीक है, ठीक है, मैं समझ गया. तो देखिए, अभी जो आपने स्पेसिफिकली पॉइंट उठाया आश्रम चेंज करने का, शादी करने का, तो अभी देखिए, अभी आप किसके बारे में बोल रहे हैं वो महत्वपूर्ण है. अगर कोई ब्रह्मचारी आश्रम चेंज करता है, शादी करता है, तो वो तो उसमें कुछ गलती नहीं है. ब्रह्मचारी शादी कर सकता है, गृहस्थ आश्रम में जा सकता है. अगर कोई सन्यासी है, सन्यासी गृहस्थ बन जाता है, तो फिर वो शास्त्रों के अनुसार वो ठीक नहीं है. तो ये पहला पॉइंट है. ठीक है. अभी अगर कुछ, अभी देखिए, जब तक कोई व्यक्ति 3 गुणों से परे नहीं है, 3 गुणों से परे नहीं है, कौन से स्टेज पर व्यक्ति 3 गुणों से परे जाता है, आप बता सकते हैं? भक्ति के 9 स्टेजेस में कौन से स्टेज पर एक भक्त 3 गुणों से परे जाता है?
जो निष्ठा है, जब वो निष्ठा लेवल पे आ जाएगा तो ये 3 गुणों से
नहीं, निष्ठा नहीं है, निष्ठा नहीं. कोई और बता सकता है कौन से स्टेज पर व्यक्ति 3 गुणों से परे जाता है?
भाव स्तर पे.
हाँ, भाव स्तर पर. भाव स्तर पर व्यक्ति 3 गुणों से परे जाता है. मतलब जब तक व्यक्ति वो भाव स्तर पर नहीं आता है, तब तक वो 3 गुणों के अंतर्गत में है, 3 गुणों से प्रभावित हो सकता है. तो इसलिए एक भक्त को हमेशा सतर्क रहना चाहिए. जब तक वो 3 गुणों के अंतर्गत है, 3 गुणों से प्रभावित है, तब तक एक भक्त को हमेशा सतर्क रहना पड़ता है. और ऑफ कोर्स अगर वो एक्चुअली वो भाव और प्रेम से स्तर पर है, फिर वो ऑटोमेटिकली वो सतर्क रहेगा ही. लेकिन पॉइंट यह है कि भक्त को हमेशा सतर्क रहना चाहिए. तो जब तक भक्त सतर्क रहता है, गुरु के आदेशों को पालन करता है, तो फिर वो सुरक्षित रहता है. लेकिन जब जैसे कि हम वो कोट पढ़ रहे थे ना प्रभुपाद जी का, कनेक्शन रहना चाहिए। बल्ब है, वायर है, स्विच है, सब कुछ है, लेकिन अगर कनेक्शन टूट जाता है तभी प्रॉब्लम शुरू होता है। तो जब तक कनेक्शन है, कनेक्शन क्या है हमारे लिए? आदेशों का पालन करना। तो जब व्यक्ति इस आदेशों का पालन ठीक से करता है तब तक वो कनेक्शन है। तो जब कनेक्शन ठीक है, नो प्रॉब्लम। तो लेकिन जब वो कनेक्शन टूट जाता है तो फिर प्रॉब्लम आ जाता है, और फिर जब प्रॉब्लम आ जाता है तो फिर ठीक है, तो फिर वो जब तक वो कनेक्शन फिर से स्थापित नहीं होता है तब तक उस भक्त को बोला जाता है कि ठीक है, थोड़ा साइड में रहो और दूसरों को उपदेश देना इत्यादि मत करो। तो पॉइंट यह है, प्रभुपाद जी अन्य लेक्चर्स और तात्पर्य में समझाते हैं कि हु इज अ पर्सन ऑन द लिबरेटेड प्लेटफॉर्म। तो अभी हमने कहा कि ठीक है, जो भाव स्तर पर है वो डेफिनेट लिबरेटेड स्तर पर है, लेकिन ठीक है अगर कोई भाव स्तर पर नहीं है तो क्या इसका मतलब यह है कि वो योग्य नहीं है दूसरों को उपदेश देने के लिए, लेक्चर्स देने के लिए? क्या वो योग्य नहीं है? नहीं, ऐसा नहीं है। प्रभुपाद जी बताते हैं कि जब एक व्यक्ति, एक लिबरेटेड व्यक्ति, एक मुक्त भक्त को फॉलो करता है, मुक्त आचार्य को फॉलो करता है, तो फिर वो भी मुक्त अवस्था में है। तो होल पॉइंट कहाँ होता है? वो कनेक्शन में। अगर कनेक्शन है तो एक मुक्त आचार्य के साथ अगर हमारा कनेक्शन है तो हालांकि मैं मुक्त अवस्था पर नहीं हो सकता हूं, लेकिन क्योंकि वो कनेक्शन है और फिर मैं वही शब्दों को रिपीट कर रहा हूं, वही आदेशों का पालन कर रहा हूं, इसलिए मैं भी मुक्त अवस्था पर होता हूं जब तक मेरा कनेक्शन है। जब वो कनेक्शन टूट जाता है तभी प्रॉब्लम्स शुरू होते हैं। पॉइंट समझ में आ गया?
हाँ ठीक है, थैंक यू प्रभु। एक छोटा सा प्रश्न था कि हमारी जो श्रद्धा है अभी भक्त के प्रति, हमने जैसा आपने बताया, वो भक्तों को कोई हिसाब से ऐसा कंटामिनेशन आने के कारण कुछ समय के लिए उनको बाजू में किया है, लेकिन सपोज उनके ऊपर मेरी श्रद्धा है और वो जो शास्त्र ही रिपीट कर रहे हैं, तो फिर उनसे सुनना चाहिए क्या नहीं सुनना चाहिए? कि समझो सबने साइड में किया है, लेकिन जो भी मेरी श्रद्धा है, क्योंकि मैं पहले से जानता हूँ और पहले से कनेक्शन है, लेकिन कुछ ऐसा कंटामिनेशन कुछ भी हो तो वो आने के कारण थोड़ा साइड में किया है, तो भी उनसे फिर कनेक्शन रख के उनका सुनना चाहिए
तो जब तक वो कनेक्शन फिर से स्थापित नहीं होता है तब तक नहीं सुनना चाहिए, क्योंकि वो कनेक्शन स्थापित नहीं हुआ है। जब कनेक्शन पुनः स्थापित होता है तब हम सुन सकते हैं। जब तक मेन पॉइंट है कनेक्शन, अगर कनेक्शन ठीक है नो प्रॉब्लम। तो जब पहले जब कनेक्शन ठीक था तो हम सुन रहे थे, अभी कनेक्शन ठीक नहीं है तो ठीक है, थोड़ा बंद करना चाहिए, फिर से कनेक्शन स्थापित हो गया, फिर से हम सुन सकते। मेन पॉइंट है कनेक्शन ठीक होना चाहिए। द पोटेंसी कम्स फ्रॉम द कनेक्शन, वही प्रभुपाद जी एक्सप्लेन कर रहे हैं। हमारे पास कुछ शक्ति नहीं है, हम भक्ति करने के लिए, प्रचार करने के लिए हमारे पास कुछ शक्ति नहीं है, हम तो केवल वो वायर के समान है। तो वायर कुछ काम का नहीं है, लेकिन वो पावर हाउस से जब कनेक्शन होता है तभी वो वायर का कुछ मतलब है, कुछ उपयोग है। तो हम भी वैसा ही है, सभी जीवात्मा जो है वो सब वैसे ही है। कोई योग्य नहीं है, लेकिन वो भगवान के साथ परंपरा के द्वारा वो कनेक्शन होने से वो शक्ति प्राप्त होती है। तो इसलिए जब वो कनेक्शन ठीक है, मतलब वो सब जो नियम इत्यादि हैं वो अच्छे तरह से फॉलो कर रहा है और वही उपदेश रिपीट कर रहा है, जब सब कुछ ठीक है तो हालांकि वो मुक्त अवस्था पर नहीं हो सकता है, लेकिन क्योंकि वो कनेक्शन ठीक है तो इसलिए वो भी मुक्त अवस्था पर माना जाता है। ठीक है,
थैंक यू।
Okay, any other questions? Actually,
Krishna Prabhuji.
Chapter, but
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Bro, now we are just talking about the contamination. We talk about Arjunas and others also. So this Radhanath Maharaj say in one of his quote, essence of spiritual life is to utilize our free will properly.
Correct.
And somebody don't utilize his free will properly, then contamination happens or it comes.
Correct.
So how to utilize our free will properly?
Yes. So how to utilize free will properly? By being in connection with those who are using it properly or have used it properly. Huh? So by being in connection with the acharyas, by being in connection with past acharyas, present acharyas, Vaishnavas who are properly practicing, by being in their connection, by being under their guidance, by following their instructions, that's how we can always utilize our free will properly. And so, of course, there is always a tendency, because of the influence of the material energy, there's always a tendency to misuse our free will. And so, therefore, the value of devotee association and specific guidance of Vaishnavas is always important. So if the problem usually arises because of not having the proper guidance. The best example we can see is in the case of Bharat Maharaj. So now we know that Bharat Maharaj was actually on the platform of Bhava, or at least early stages of Bhava. So such a high elevated platform, but still there was misuse of free will. And he got attached to the deer, and we know everything that happens. So there's one purport where Srila Prabhupada writes that the reason why Bharat Maharaj got debated is because he did not consult a spiritual master. So that is why the association of devotees is given so much of importance, and the specific shelter and guidance of a spiritual master, a spiritual authority, always holds true, because Maya is very strong, and there's always a tendency to misuse the free will. So if we're always under proper guidance and we're always following the proper instructions, that's how we'll be safe. Is that all right, Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Okay, if there is maybe one question we could take before we close for today.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
One question I want to ask. How we can actually understand, like today we're discussing about bodily conception of life. So how actually can we understand a person to have risen beyond bodily conception, or that he has risen beyond the three modes? Is it like Sthita Pragyasya Kabhas in Bhagavad Gita? It mentions that how does a self-realized soul walk, how does it talk? So even if we read that, but we exactly will not be able to understand, because we also see in order to know one, it takes.
Yes. So you are asking again a similar question actually, because rising beyond bodily concept means what? Rising beyond the three modes, correct?
Yes.
So rising beyond three modes means what? Liberated platform, correct?
Yes.
So you're asking the same question. So who's on the liberated platform? And Prabhupada has given a very clear understanding of this in his purports. So one who follows a liberated soul can also be considered to be on the liberated platform, even though he may not be actually on that platform. So as long as one is following the liberated soul, one is following the previous acharyas, he can be considered to be on the liberated platform, even though he may not actually be on that platform. So the essence is how one is seriously following the instructions of the previous acharyas. That is what is most important for us to check. How much one is very seriously following the instructions of the previous acharyas. So he may not be on the liberated platform. He may not be free from the bodily concept or free from the three modes. But that's the example which Prabhupada also has given, is the raw mango and the ripe mango. So if the raw mango continues to remain attached to the tree, it's just a matter of time, it's going to become ripe. Correct? So similarly, as long as the person is following the instructions of the acharyas, the parampara, then it's just a matter of time, he's actually going to come on the liberated platform. But even now, because he's following, it is as good as being on the liberated.
Yes.
Is it clear?
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Okay, good. So there are so many questions, almost time up. So Balbhadra Kripa Prabhu, Hare Krishna, are you there?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay, so we are definitely running a little behind schedule.
Yes, Prabhuji.
My plan was to actually finish this 15th chapter today. So it seems that we will finish the 15th chapter only tomorrow. And then there is 16th chapter. So I think so at least one extra class we will require. Huh?
Yes,
So,
Prabhuji.
will Saturday be okay? This Saturday? Because Friday I am a little busy with something else.
Prabhuji, Saturday and Sunday devotees are busy with the online classes and different engagements. So every day you can extend project 15 minutes or half an hour that we can cover.
You suggest that, huh?
Instead of taking one another day, we can extend. Next week we have 4 days, Monday to Thursday. So we have Friday as a reserve, and every day we can extend for 15 minutes or 30 minutes.
Acha, okay. Half an hour we can extend, you're saying.
Yes, Prabhuji.
So, so you will have to check with the other devotees, no, whether they're okay with this.
It's okay, Prabhu.
So, of course, you may be. What about the congregation devotees? And Narasimha Prabhu can say something.
I think so. We have to also check with them, Prabhuji, but I think mostly they should be okay. But I'll check with them on the group, WhatsApp group.
Okay, okay, fine. So, okay, so in any case, you'll confirm and let me know accordingly. So, what is at least one extra class will require. So, that would be nice. Of course, we can squeeze things and finish off if there's no other option. But it would be nice to have at least one extra class. So, maybe you can check with other devotees and let me know.
Prabhuji, from ashram side, devotee can extend till 1:30 maximum.
Right, that's half an hour more. Okay, so maybe Narasimha Prabhu can check with the other devotees.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay, fine. Okay. So thank you very much. Grandraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare